What I did here is gathered some data from the input-output tables to try to get a feel for, in the different stores that we shop, retail, or some of the products that we buy, how much of the dollar that we spend on those things goes to the physical product itself versus add-ons along the way. So we just talked about gasoline. There's 10% of gasoline that doesn't go to the refinery that made the chemical. Gasoline's a chemical. It's involved with shipping and labor, the kinds of things that I just mentioned. So there's room to adjust. If you want to view the red part as the K, and the green part is what potentially could be L, well, there's room to expand L. You get the consumers to do some of this stuff. Gasoline is actually one of the more extreme ones. Many of these stores and products, there's a huge part that doesn't go for the physical. If you look at retail food and beverage stores, grocery stores in other words, very little of what you spend at the grocery store is going to the farmer or the food manufacturer. There's a farmer who maybe grows the vegetables and a manufacturer puts them in a can. There's very little that goes to them. Most of it's getting added on later. To ship it away from the farm and toward you, that would be a factor. To have it in a store that's near you, the store needs rent. The blue shirt people, labor, refrigeration. So you could start putting price controls on the products that are sold in grocery stores, and there's lots of room to bring the consumer in here and let them take on some of this green responsibility. And we'll see that empirically. I've given examples of some food products. You know, the majority of what you spend on eggs doesn't go to the egg farmer or the chicken. It's refrigeration, packaging, transportation. Yes?
And these bars also include the profit margin, right?
Yes. I mean, there's capital. I mean, the grocery store owns, maybe they own their own structure. They're not, one thing we could do is not have a structure and sell it outside. Right? Good luck on the rainy day. But these are all things where the consumer can step in there and get a different product for cheaper. Okay, the unregulated market is going to minimize the total costs. There's these different types of costs that the companies can do, the costs that consumers can do. We want to balance those, balancing how many closed aisles at Kroger's versus open aisles. I want to point out the market will minimize the total costs. It will not minimize the marginal cost. And those are not the same here. Unless the two supply curves are equally elastic, those are not going to be the same. I can give you an example of the green parts are the choices that minimize the total cost. But we could choose these black dots instead, go with less K and more L. That wouldn't minimize the total cost, but it would reduce the marginal cost. Because then if somebody comes and says, I need more output, then I say, okay, I'm going to boost my output by hiring K. K is very cheap. So we need to keep that in mind, because that's going to drive a lot of our results here. That when we constrain the market and what they can do, it's going to raise their costs, but it doesn't have to raise their marginal costs. And furthermore, it's not just going to be like a quirky thing, like, oh, in some weird, it's like a Giffen good. You never see it. No, in some sense, it can happen half the time, that the marginal cost can be reduced while you're increasing the costs. So what's going to happen to marginal cost? Remember I said the marginal cost is going to be WL plus RK. And I think in this slide I go with the ceiling. I think we can talk about both. Let's start with the floor. So a floor is going to shift from L to K. We have a minimum money price, so the way that the producers are going to compete here is going to say, well, we'll make it easier on you, consumer. We're not allowed to offer you a lower price, that's against the law, but we can offer you a product that's more finished. It's better quality for you if you want to refer to K that way. So a floor will go in that direction. And as we shift from this direction, we're reducing L and increasing K, of course. But as we reduce L, we're also reducing W, and we're increasing R. So we'll keep track of that. And then ceiling would go in the other direction. A ceiling will put more burden on the consumer and less burden on the company. And that'll go the opposite direction with the R. And R will fall and W will rise. Now, if these two were equally elastic, the factors were equally elastically supplied, we shift from, say, K to L to maintain output. We're not going to really affect cost because we were minimizing cost before. The producers were minimizing WL plus RK. The producers take W and L as given. So they're already cost minimizing, not going to minimize cost. Now they will, as they shift from K to L, that will tend to drive up W and drive down R. But if these two are equally elastically supplied, those will exactly cancel. So there'll be no effect on the sum in that case. But remember that last step in the logic I just used. Well, if they're equally elastically supplied. If they're not equally elastically supplied, then whichever one is less elastically supplied will be the one that tends to move more. So we kind of have two cases we're always considering here. Is K the elastically supplied comparatively input, or is L? If it's K, then R won't be changing that much. And this shift will tend to be in the direction of raising the cost, marginal cost, raising P. On the other hand, if it's L, this shift will go in the direction of reducing P. Even though it's raising cost overall, because the market was minimizing that. So to summarize, okay, and then maybe it's obvious, whatever the ceiling does to P, the floor is going to do the opposite. So while I said we can't say without knowing about the elasticities whether a ceiling is going to raise or lower P, but whatever it does, the floor is going to do the opposite. And you could kind of start to see here, well, P is going to determine what people buy. So if a floor moves P in the opposite direction of a ceiling, then it's going to move quantity in the opposite direction of the ceiling.